The morning I found the citation taped to my mailbox was the morning everything changed, and not in the way the Pinewood Hills HOA probably expected when they printed it out on their fancy letterhead. I stood there in my driveway at 6 in the morning, breath fogging in the freezing Vermont air, staring at the piece of paper that accused me of violating Section 12.4 of the Community Guidelines regarding snow removal timelines. According to the citation, I had failed to clear my driveway and walkway within the required 4-hour window following the end of snowfall. The fine was $250, and it was signed by none other than Patricia Kendall, the HOA president who had made it her personal mission to make my life miserable since I moved to Burlington 3 years ago. The thing is, I had cleared my snow. I always did. I ran a landscaping and property maintenance business, and I owned a commercial-grade plow truck that I used not just for my own property, but for half the neighborhood. In fact, I had been plowing driveways for several of my elderly neighbors for free ever since I moved in, including the section of private road that led to the community clubhouse that technically belonged to the HOA. I crumpled the citation in my fist and looked at my perfectly cleared driveway, then at the 10 inches of fresh powder that had fallen overnight. I had been out here at 3 in the morning, right after the snow stopped, clearing everything before most people even woke up. My truck was still warm from the effort. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my business partner, Derek, calling about a commercial job we had scheduled for that afternoon. I answered while walking back toward my house, my boots crunching in the snow. "Hey Carter, you see this next storm coming in?" Derek asked. "Weather service says another foot tomorrow night." "Yeah, I saw it," I said, unlocking my front door. "Listen, I need to deal with something this morning. Can you handle the Morrison account alone?" "Sure, no problem. Everything okay?" I looked at the citation again. "Just HOA nonsense. I'll fill you in later." After hanging up, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, studying the citation more carefully. The supposed violation occurred after the storm that ended at 11 p.m. last night. According to their records, an HOA board member had driven through the neighborhood at 4 a.m. and documented that my property still had snow coverage. That was impossible because I had finished clearing my driveway, walkway, and even the street in front of my house by 3:30 a.m. I pulled out my phone and checked the security camera footage from my front door. Sure enough, there I was at 2:47 a.m. starting up my plow truck. By 3:31 a.m., everything was cleared. I saved the footage to my computer and decided to attend the next HOA board meeting, which according to the citation was scheduled for that evening at 7. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work calls and preparation. I printed out screenshots from my security footage with timestamps clearly visible, gathered my property records, and reviewed the HOA bylaws I had received when I purchased my house. Section 12.4 did indeed require snow removal within 4 hours of snowfall ending, but it also included provisions for reasonable compliance documentation. That evening, I drove to the Pinewood Hills Community Clubhouse, a sprawling building at the center of our development that always seemed to be hosting some committee meeting or social event. The parking lot was already half full when I arrived, and I recognized several of my neighbors' vehicles. I parked my truck in a space near the entrance, noting with some satisfaction that the parking lot itself had been plowed immaculately. I had done that too, at 4 a.m., as a favor to the community. Inside, the meeting room was set up with rows of folding chairs facing a long table where the board members sat. Patricia Kendall occupied the center seat, her blonde hair styled in that aggressive bob cut that screamed suburban authority. She wore a navy blazer and had a stack of folders in front of her. To her right sat Marcus Webb, the treasurer, a thin man in his 50s who always looked uncomfortable in these meetings. To her left was Jennifer Holloway, the secretary, who seemed more interested in her phone than the proceedings. I took a seat in the third row, behind old Mrs. Chen, who lived 2 houses down from me. She turned and gave me a warm smile. "Carter, dear, are you here about that ridiculous citation?" she whispered. "You know about that. Everyone knows. Patricia has been bragging about finally catching you in a violation." Mrs. Chen shook her head. "That woman has too much time on her hands." Before I could respond, Patricia banged a gavel on the table and the meeting came to order. She went through the usual tedious routine of reading minutes from the last meeting, discussing the community budget, and addressing minor maintenance issues. I sat through 20 minutes of debate about whether to replace the clubhouse carpet before she finally reached new business. "We have several violation citations to address," Patricia announced, her voice carrying that particular tone of satisfaction that came from wielding petty authority. "First, we have documented Mr. Carter Hammond at 412 Maple Ridge Drive for failure to comply with Section 12.4 regarding timely snow removal." I raised my hand. "I'd like to address that citation." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "There will be time for appeals after we've documented all violations." "With respect, I'd prefer to address it now since I have evidence that the citation is factually incorrect." A murmur went through the small crowd. Patricia's face tightened, but she gestured for me to come forward. I walked to the front of the room and pulled out my printed screenshots. "This citation claims that at 4 a.m. this morning, my property still had snow coverage from last night's storm," I said, holding up the document. "However, my security camera footage shows that I completed snow removal at 3:31 a.m., a full 29 minutes before the alleged violation time." I handed the screenshots to Marcus, who studied them carefully before passing them to Patricia. Her face had gone slightly red. "Security footage can be manipulated," she said. "I have the original files, time-stamped and dated, stored on multiple devices. I'm happy to provide them for independent verification." Mrs. Chen started clapping from her seat, and a few other people joined in. Patricia's face grew redder. "Furthermore," I continued, "I've been clearing snow not just from my own property, but from several neighbors' driveways, including Mrs. Chen, Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, and the Pattersons. I've also been plowing the private access road to this very clubhouse, free of charge, for the past 3 winters. All of this work is documented with timestamps and GPS data from my commercial vehicle." "That's irrelevant to your violation," Patricia snapped. "Actually, it's completely relevant because it establishes a pattern of not just compliance but exceptional community service that goes well beyond what's required in the bylaws." Marcus cleared his throat. "Patricia, I think we should review this evidence before proceeding with the fine. It seems pretty clear that the citation stands," Patricia interrupted. "Mr. Hammond can file a formal appeal if he wishes, but this board has the authority to enforce community standards, and I witnessed the violation personally." "You're saying you were the one who documented my property at 4 a.m., I asked. "That's correct. And you're certain about the time?" "Absolutely." I pulled out another document. "That's interesting because according to your own post on the neighborhood Facebook group, which you made at 3:55 a.m. this morning, you were at home dealing with a flooded basement. You even posted photos of the water damage. Unless you can be in 2 places at once, I don't see how you could have been driving through the neighborhood documenting violations." The room erupted. Several neighbors started talking at once, and I could see Marcus and Jennifer exchanging glances. Patricia's face had gone from red to almost purple. "This meeting is out of order," she shouted, banging her gavel repeatedly. "I'm closing the new business section. Mr. Hammond, your fine stands, and if you continue to disrupt these proceedings, we'll add additional penalties." "On what grounds?" I asked calmly. "On the grounds that I'm the HOA president and I have the authority to maintain order in these meetings." I gathered my documents and returned to my seat, but I could feel the anger building in my chest. The rest of the meeting was a blur. Patricia rushed through the remaining agenda items and adjourned early, practically fleeing from the room as neighbors tried to ask questions. Mrs. Chen caught up with me in the parking lot. "Carter, that was completely unfair. Everyone knows you keep this neighborhood beautiful, especially in winter." "Thanks, Mrs. Chen. I appreciate that. What are you going to do?" I looked at the clubhouse, then at the private road I had spent an hour plowing that morning. "I'm not sure yet, but I know I'm not paying that fine." The next morning, I woke to another citation on my mailbox. This one claimed I had violated parking regulations by leaving my commercial vehicle in my driveway overnight, despite the fact that the bylaws specifically allowed for commercial vehicles under a certain weight class, and my truck qualified. The fine was $300. I took a photo of the citation, posted it to the neighborhood Facebook group along with the relevant bylaw section, and went about my day. By noon, the post had 60 comments, almost all of them supportive. Several neighbors shared their own stories of questionable citations from Patricia, painting a picture of an HOA president who had become increasingly aggressive and petty over the past year. That afternoon, Derek and I were working on a commercial property in downtown Burlington when my phone started buzzing with notifications. I checked during our lunch break and found that the neighborhood Facebook group had exploded. Patricia had made a post threatening legal action against anyone who defamed the HOA board, and she had specifically called me out for undermining community authority. "This lady sounds insane," Derek said, reading over my shoulder. "She's something, all right," I muttered. That evening, I received a call from Marcus Webb, the HOA treasurer. His voice was apologetic and strained. "Carter, I want you to know that not everyone on the board supports Patricia's actions. Jennifer and I have both expressed concerns about how she's handling these citations." "Then why don't you do something about it?" I asked. "It's complicated. Patricia has been president for 4 years and she has support from some of the other residents. But I wanted to give you a heads up that she's planning to escalate things. She's talking about putting a lien on your property if you don't pay the fines." "A lien? Over some bogus citations?" I know. I'm just telling you what she's planning. And Carter, there's something else. She's really angry about you plowing the community road. She's saying that because you're not being paid for it and you're not an official HOA contractor, you're creating liability issues." I laughed bitterly. "So I do something nice for the community and now it's a problem. Like I said, it's complicated. Just watch yourself, okay?" After hanging up, I sat in my living room and thought about the situation. I had moved to Pinewood Hills because it was a nice neighborhood with good people, and I had genuinely enjoyed helping out my neighbors. But Patricia's vendetta was making it impossible to continue living here peacefully. The next storm hit 2 days later, just as the Weather Service had predicted. 14 inches of heavy, wet snow fell overnight, and I woke at 4 a.m. to begin clearing. I started with my own driveway and walkway, making sure to document everything with multiple camera angles. Then, I moved on to Mrs. Chen's house, the Rodriguez family, and the Pattersons. Each time I knocked on their door, let them know I was finished, and made sure they saw the timestamp on my truck's dashboard camera. Then I came to the community road that led to the clubhouse. I sat in my truck, engine idling, watching the snow pile up across the pavement. This road wasn't technically part of the HOA's contracted maintenance. It was a private drive that connected several homes to the main community amenities, and for 3 years I had been clearing it as a courtesy. But if Patricia wanted to threaten me with fines and liens, if she wanted to turn my community service into a liability issue, then maybe it was time to stop providing that service. I turned my truck around and headed home. By 9 a.m., my phone was ringing. It was Jennifer Holloway, the HOA secretary. "Carter, the clubhouse road hasn't been plowed. We have a children's playgroup scheduled for this morning, and parents can't get through." "I'm not the HOA's contracted snow removal service," I said calmly, "but you've always plowed that road. And according to Patricia, I've been creating liability issues by doing so. I'm just eliminating that liability." There was a long pause. "This is about the citations, isn't it?" "This is about me not providing free services to an organization that's actively trying to fine me thousands of dollars for imaginary violations. Carter, please, call a professional snow removal company. There are several good ones in Burlington. I can even give you some recommendations." I hung up and turned off my phone. I knew this was going to create problems, but I was done being the neighborhood doormat while Patricia used her position to harass me. The Facebook group exploded again that afternoon. Parents posted photos of the impassable clubhouse road, and several people tagged Patricia demanding to know why the HOA hadn't arranged for professional snow removal. Patricia responded by posting that the HOA had always relied on community volunteers for this service, and that budget constraints made it difficult to hire contractors. Mrs. Chen posted a comment that I saw later. "Carter Hammond has been volunteering his time and expensive equipment for 3 years to keep that road clear. Maybe if the HOA president spent less time issuing bogus fines and more time appreciating community members, we wouldn't be in this situation." The comment got over 100 likes. 3 days later, I received a certified letter from the HOA's attorney. It was a formal demand to pay the accumulated fines, which now totaled $750 due to late fees and administrative costs. The letter also informed me that if payment wasn't received within 15 days, the HOA would begin lien proceedings against my property. I called my own attorney, Robert Chen, who happened to be Mrs. Chen's nephew and a real estate lawyer in Burlington. "Carter, I've seen the documentation you sent me," Robert said during our meeting at his office. "You have a very strong case here. The citations are clearly retaliatory and not based on actual violations. The security footage alone proves that. Can they actually put a lien on my house?" "Technically, yes. HOAs have broad authority to enforce fines and fees. However, given the circumstances, I think we can challenge this successfully. More importantly, I think we might have grounds for a harassment claim against the HOA president personally. I don't want to sue anybody. I just want to be left alone. I understand, but you need to protect yourself. Let me draft a response to their attorney. In the meantime, document everything. Every interaction, every citation, every social media post. Build your case." I left Robert's office feeling slightly better but still frustrated. This whole situation was absurd. All I had wanted was to be a good neighbor, and now I was facing legal action. That weekend, another storm rolled through. 12 inches this time. I cleared my property and my neighbors' driveways, but I left the clubhouse road untouched. The Facebook group was full of complaints, and Patricia posted a rant about selfish community members who refused to contribute to the common good. I replied with a simple comment. I'm happy to contribute to the common good once the HOA withdraws the false citations and stops threatening my property with liens. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. People started sharing their own grievances with Patricia's leadership, and several residents began calling for a special election to remove her from the board. Patricia responded by locking down the Facebook group and removing several members, including me. This backfired spectacularly when someone created a new group called Pinewood Hills Residents United, and over 200 people joined within 24 hours. Things escalated further when the community newsletter came out. Patricia had written a full-page editorial about entitled residents who think they are above community rules, and while she didn't mention me by name, it was obvious who she was talking about. She described me as a commercial business owner who uses neighborhood amenities for personal profit, and suggested that my landscaping business somehow benefited from access to the community clubhouse. This made no sense whatsoever, but the accusations were printed and distributed to every mailbox in the neighborhood. I was furious, but Robert advised me to stay calm. "She's making this worse for herself," he said. "Every false statement, every escalation, it all helps our case. Keep documenting." The special election petition gained traction faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, over 60% of homeowners had signed, easily exceeding the threshold required by the HOA bylaws to trigger a recall vote. Patricia tried to challenge the petition's validity, claiming that some signatures were forged, but an independent review confirmed that everything was legitimate. The recall election was scheduled for mid-February, 6 weeks after the initial citation. In the meantime, winter continued its assault on Vermont, and I continued my policy of plowing only my property and my immediate neighbors' driveways. The clubhouse road remained buried under snow after each storm, and the HOA was forced to hire an emergency contractor at premium rates to clear it. According to Marcus Webb, who called me periodically with updates, this was putting a serious strain on the HOA budget. The contractor charged 3 times what a regular service would cost because they were being called out on short notice each time. Patricia blamed me for the budget crisis in every board meeting. "She's completely obsessed with this," Marcus told me during one call. "She brings you up in every discussion. She's even talking about trying to force you to sell your house and move out of the neighborhood." On what grounds? She keeps citing vague bylaw violations, but honestly, Carter, I think she's losing it. Jennifer and I are both voting to recall her. We've tried to work with her, but she won't listen to reason. The week before the recall election, something happened that changed everything. I woke up one morning to find that someone had slashed all 4 tires on my plow truck. The vehicle was parked in my driveway, clearly visible from the street, and the damage was extensive. Deep cuts ran through each tire, and someone had also scratched "Plow this" into the paint on my driver's side door. I immediately called the police. Officer Daniel Morrison arrived within 30 minutes, took photographs, and filed a report. He walked around my truck examining the damage carefully. "Any idea who might have done this?" he asked. "I have suspicions, but I don't want to make accusations without proof." "This is your business vehicle, right?" "Yes, I use it for my landscaping company and for personal snow removal." Officer Morrison nodded slowly. "I've heard about the HOA situation. My sister lives in this neighborhood. She's one of the people who signed the recall petition. Small world. Mr. Hammond, I need to ask you to check your security cameras. If you have footage of the vandalism, it could help us identify the perpetrator." I pulled up my security footage and found exactly what I expected. At 2:37 a.m., a figure dressed in dark clothing approached my truck. The person's face was covered, but the body type and movements looked distinctly feminine. The footage showed the person slashing the tires methodically, then taking a key or sharp object to the driver's door. The entire incident lasted less than 3 minutes. Can I get a copy of that footage? Officer Morrison asked. Absolutely. He took the USB drive I prepared and promised to follow up. As he was leaving, he paused at his patrol car. Off the record, Mr. Hammond, you might want to install additional security measures. People who do this kind of thing sometimes escalate. His words proved prophetic. 2 nights later, my security cameras caught someone trying to break into my garage. The person tried to force the side door but gave up when the alarm system activated. The police came again, took another report, and Officer Morrison told me they were investigating multiple incidents of vandalism in the neighborhood, all targeting people who had signed the recall petition. This is beyond HOA drama now, he said. We're looking at criminal harassment and vandalism. If we can establish a pattern and identify the perpetrator, we'll be making arrests. The recall election took place on a Tuesday evening at the clubhouse. Despite the ongoing snow and cold, turnout was massive. Over 300 homeowners showed up, filling the main meeting room and spilling into the hallway. I arrived early and found Mrs. Chen saving me a seat. This is exciting, she said. I haven't seen this many people engaged in community politics in 20 years. Patricia looked haggard as she called the meeting to order. Her usual crisp appearance was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and a rumpled blazer. She went through the procedural requirements for the recall vote, her voice tight and strained. The voting process took over an hour. Each homeowner had to present ID and verify their address before receiving a ballot. Marcus and Jennifer oversaw the process, with a neutral third party from a local property management company serving as the official counter. While we waited for the results, several residents stood up to speak. Most expressed frustration with Patricia's leadership and cited specific examples of overreach and poor decision-making. A few people defended her, arguing that strong leadership was necessary to maintain property values, but they were in the minority. When the votes were finally tallied, the result was overwhelming. Patricia was removed from the HOA board by a margin of 73%. Jennifer Holloway was elected as the new president, and 2 other community members were voted onto the board to fill vacant positions. Patricia's reaction was chilling. She stood up, swept her papers into her bag, and addressed the room in a voice shaking with anger. You're all making a terrible mistake. This neighborhood will fall apart without proper leadership. And you, she pointed directly at me, you're going to regret interfering with HOA business. I promise you that. She stormed out of the clubhouse, leaving an uncomfortable silence behind her. Jennifer stood up and tried to restore order, thanking everyone for participating and promising a fresh start for the HOA. But Patricia's parting words hung in the air like a threat. The next morning, I found out what she meant. My mailbox had been torn completely off its post and thrown into my front yard. Additionally, someone had spray-painted profanities across my garage door. The security footage showed a figure matching Patricia's build doing the damage at 4 a.m., though the person's face was still obscured by a hood and scarf. This time, when Officer Morrison arrived, he wasn't alone. A detective named Sarah Williams accompanied him, and she took a much more serious interest in the footage. "Mr. Hammond, we've been building a case," Detective Williams said. "Your vandalism incidents, combined with 3 other properties in this neighborhood, suggest a pattern of targeted harassment. Can you think of any connection between the victims? We all signed the recall petition, and we've all had disputes with Patricia Kendall, the former HOA president." Detective Williams nodded. We're aware of Mrs. Kendall. We've actually been trying to establish probable cause to search her property. This footage might be enough, but we need to positively identify the person in the video. What if I told you that Patricia drives a silver Honda CR-V, license plate VT4729, and that same vehicle is clearly visible in the background of this footage, pulling away after the vandalism? Detective Williams looked at the footage again, zooming in on the street. Sure enough, a silver Honda was parked 2 houses down, and in the final frames it pulled away right after the vandalized figure left my property. That's our probable cause, she said, a grim satisfaction in her voice. 2 days later, police executed a search warrant on Patricia's house. They found the clothing worn during the vandalisms, including a black hoodie with paint residue matching the spray paint used on my garage. They also found a detailed journal in which Patricia had documented her grievances against me and other neighborhood residents, including specific plans for teaching them lessons about respecting HOA authority. Patricia was arrested and charged with multiple counts of vandalism, criminal harassment, and destruction of property. The charges were serious enough that she was held on bail, and her case made local news. The Burlington Free Press ran a story about HOA disputes gone wrong, and suddenly Pinewood Hills was famous for all the wrong reasons. Jennifer Holloway called me the day after Patricia's arrest. "Carter, the new board wants to meet with you. We owe you a massive apology, and we need to make things right." The meeting took place at the clubhouse, which I noticed had a freshly plowed access road. The new board consisted of Jennifer, Marcus, and 3 other residents I knew casually. They all looked genuinely apologetic as I sat down. "First and foremost," Jennifer began, "we're withdrawing all citations against you, effective immediately. The fines are canceled, and we're issuing a formal apology for the harassment you endured." "Second," Marcus added, "we're investigating all citations issued by Patricia over the past 2 years. We've already found at least 15 instances of questionable or completely fabricated violations against various residents. We'll be issuing refunds where appropriate." "Third," said one of the new board members, a woman named Helen Carter, "we want to establish a formal snow removal contract with your company for the community road and common areas. Fair compensation, proper insurance documentation, everything above board." I considered this. "I appreciate the apology and the offer, but I need to know this kind of thing won't happen again. I need protection from vindictive board members who decide they don't like me." Jennifer nodded. "We're completely revising the citation and fine system. All violations will require photographic evidence, opportunity for immediate appeal, and board consensus before fines can be issued. We're also establishing term limits and recall procedures that are much easier to trigger. And," Marcus said, "we're proposing a good neighbor recognition program. You've been helping this community for 3 years without asking for anything in return. That should be celebrated, not punished." We spent the next hour working out details. The snow removal contract was fair and reasonable, compensating me for equipment, time, and fuel without being excessive. They also agreed to post an official notice on the community website and newsletter explaining what had happened and acknowledging the wrongful citations. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to normal. I continued plowing the community road, but now I was being paid fairly for it. My neighbors remained supportive, and several of them brought over homemade cookies and casseroles as gestures of appreciation. Mrs. Chen organized a community dinner in my honor, which was embarrassing but touching. Patricia's criminal case moved through the court system. Her attorney tried to argue that she had been under extreme stress and that the journal entries were just venting, not actual plans, but the physical evidence was overwhelming. In April, she pleaded guilty to multiple misdemeanor vandalism charges and one felony count of criminal harassment. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, suspended to probation, 300 hours of community service, restitution to all victims, and a permanent ban from holding any HOA position in Vermont. The restitution check I received covered the cost of 4 new tires, repainting my garage door, replacing my mailbox, and compensating me for the stress and lost work time. It wasn't about the money for me, but it felt like official acknowledgement that what had happened was wrong. In May, the new HOA board held a community gathering at the clubhouse to celebrate the neighborhood's recovery from what everyone was now calling the HOA crisis. Jennifer gave a speech about community values, mutual respect, and the importance of leadership that serves rather than dominates. It was optimistic and forward-looking, exactly what the neighborhood needed. I brought my girlfriend, Lisa, who I had started dating in March. She was a teacher at the local elementary school, and we had met when I plowed out the school parking lot after a particularly nasty storm. She had heard all about the HOA drama and found the whole thing both appalling and darkly funny. "So this is the infamous clubhouse," she said as we walked in, "scene of the great snow plowing rebellion. I prefer to think of it as the place where I learned to stand up for myself," I said. "That's a very diplomatic way of putting it." Mrs. Chen intercepted us near the refreshment table. "Carter, you brought a date. How wonderful, and you must be Lisa. Carter's told me all about you." Lisa smiled warmly. "All good things, I hope. With Carter, it's always good things. This young man has a heart of gold, even when people don't deserve his kindness." We spent the evening mingling with neighbors, many of whom wanted to thank me personally for not giving up during the conflict with Patricia. It was overwhelming in the best way, a reminder that most people were decent and appreciative, even if a few bad actors could cause disproportionate problems. As Lisa and I were leaving, Jennifer caught up with us. "Carter, I wanted to tell you something privately. We received a letter from Patricia's attorney last week. She wanted to apologize directly to you, but her probation terms prevent her from making contact. Her lawyer read us the letter instead." "What did it say?" She admitted that she had let the power of the HOA position go to her head. She said she had convinced herself that strict enforcement of rules was the same as good leadership, and that anyone who questioned her was attacking the community itself. She said the vandalism started as impulsive anger, but then it became an obsession. She knows she destroyed her own life over something petty and stupid. I thought about that. I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't excuse what she did. No, it doesn't, but I thought you should know that she understands that now. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can see clearly. On the drive home, Lisa asked me if I felt vindicated. "I don't know if vindicated is the right word," I said. "More like relieved. For a while there, I thought I was crazy, like maybe I was the problem. But it turned out that standing up for myself was exactly the right thing to do. You could have just paid the fines and avoided all the drama." I could have, but then Patricia would have kept doing it to other people. Sometimes you have to draw a line, even when it's uncomfortable. Lisa reached over and squeezed my hand. "That's what I like about you, Carter. You have principles." Summer arrived, bringing warm weather and the end of snow season. My landscaping business was busier than ever, and I picked up several new clients from the Pinewood Hills neighborhood. Derek joked that I should send Patricia a thank you card for the free publicity, but I figured that would be in poor taste. In June, the HOA held elections for the remaining board positions. The process was transparent and well attended, a marked contrast to the previous regime. The new board members were people I knew and respected, and they all seemed committed to running the HOA as a service organization rather than a fiefdom. One afternoon, I was mowing Mrs. Chen's lawn when she came out with lemonade and cookies. We sat on her porch, enjoying the summer breeze. "You know, Carter, this neighborhood is a better place because of you," she said. "I don't know about that. I just refuse to be bullied." "That's exactly why it's better. For too long, people were afraid to speak up against Patricia. They knew she was being unreasonable, but they didn't want the hassle. You showed everyone that it's possible to fight back against petty tyrants, even in something as mundane as a homeowners association." "I just wanted to plow some snow and be left alone." Mrs. Chen laughed. "That's what makes it perfect. You weren't looking for a fight, you were just trying to be a good neighbor. But when pushed, you pushed back. There's a lesson in that." As I drove home later that afternoon, I thought about everything that had happened. The citations, the harassment, the vandalism, the legal battles, and finally the resolution. It had been exhausting and stressful, but it had also taught me something important about community and standing up for what's right. I pulled into my driveway and looked at my house, my property, my neighborhood. This was home, and I had fought to protect it, not just for myself, but for everyone who had been intimidated by an out-of-control HOA president. The fight had been worth it. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I smiled and texted back yes, then headed inside to shower and change. Life was good, the neighborhood was peaceful, and winter seemed like a distant memory. But I knew that when the snow came again, I would be ready with my plow truck, my security cameras, and my determination to be a good neighbor on my own terms. The following months proved that the changes in the HOA were more than superficial. Jennifer's leadership style was collaborative and transparent. Board meetings were recorded and posted online for residents who couldn't attend. Proposed rule changes were circulated for comment before being voted on. The citation system was reformed to emphasize education and cooperation, rather than punishment and fines. In September, the HOA hired a professional property management company to handle administrative tasks and provide oversight. This move was designed to prevent any single board member from accumulating too much power or making unilateral decisions. The company brought standardization and accountability that had been sorely lacking. I continued my work, both with my landscaping business and as the HOA's official snow removal contractor. The contract we had signed in February was fair and clear, with defined responsibilities, payment schedules, and performance standards. It felt good to be properly compensated for work I had previously done out of simple neighborly goodness. In October, I proposed to Lisa during a weekend trip to Lake Champlain. She said yes, and we started planning a summer wedding. Mrs. Chen insisted on hosting our engagement party, which turned into a neighborhood celebration with over 100 people attending. The sense of community in Pinewood Hills had been restored, perhaps even strengthened by the crisis we had all endured together. When the first snow of the new season fell in November, I was ready. I had upgraded my equipment, installed additional security cameras, and made sure all my documentation systems were in place. But this time, there was no anxiety about citations or confrontations. I cleared my routes efficiently, checked in with my elderly neighbors, and plowed the community road without drama. Jennifer sent me a thank you email the next morning, along with a photo she had taken of the pristine clubhouse road. "This is what good community partnership looks like," she wrote. "Thank you for everything you do." It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. This was what I had wanted all along: simple appreciation and fair treatment for honest work. The anniversary of that first citation came and went without fanfare. I was too busy preparing for the holidays and planning the wedding to dwell on the past. But one evening in December, I drove past Patricia's old house and saw a "for sale" sign in the yard. According to neighborhood gossip, she had moved to New Hampshire to live with her sister. Unable to face the community where she had caused so much damage, I felt a complicated mix of emotions seeing that sign. Part of me felt vindicated, proof that actions have consequences. But another part felt sad that it had come to this, that someone had let their ego and need for control destroy their place in a community. Lisa noticed my expression when I came home. "Thinking about Patricia, her house is up for sale. How do you feel about that, honestly?" I feel sorry for her. She had a position of trust and authority, and she used it to bully people instead of helping them. She lost everything over what amounts to a petness. It's tragic in a way. "You're more generous than I would be. She tried to destroy you." "I know, but I won. I kept my home, my reputation, and my self-respect. She lost all of those things. That's punishment enough." Christmas in Pinewood Hills was magical that year. The HOA organized a neighborhood light display contest, and dozens of families participated. My contribution was modest, just some tasteful white lights and a wreath, but the collective effect was stunning. The neighborhood sparkled with holiday spirit, and families walked the streets in the evenings, admiring the displays and greeting their neighbors. On Christmas Eve, I drove through the neighborhood in my plow truck after a light dusting of snow, clearing paths so people could safely attend services and visit family. It was peaceful work, and I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in just 1 year. This time last year, I had been stressed and angry, fighting citations and dealing with harassment. Now I was engaged to a wonderful woman, running a successful business, and living in a community that valued and respected me. The transformation was remarkable. New Year's Eve brought another significant snowfall, nearly 18 inches overnight. I spent New Year's Day plowing, but this time Lisa came with me, bringing coffee and keeping me company between routes. We listened to music and talked about our plans for the future as snow swirled around the truck. "You really love this, don't you?" she asked as I finished clearing Mrs. Chen's driveway. "I love helping people. I love seeing a job well done. And yeah, I love the snow. It's peaceful out here, even when it's hard work. You're going to be a great husband. Because I can plow snow. Because you care about people and you're not afraid to do the right thing even when it's difficult. Those are good qualities in a partner." We kissed in the truck cab, surrounded by winter wonderland, and I felt completely content. The rest of winter passed smoothly. I plowed dozens of storms, maintained the community roads, and continued growing my business. The HOA board functioned efficiently, and there were no more dramatic confrontations or controversies. It was almost boring in the best possible way. In March, I attended a regional conference for landscape and property maintenance professionals. During a panel discussion about dealing with difficult clients, I shared my story about the HOA conflict. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of business owners approached me afterward to share their own stories of unreasonable HOA boards, vindictive property managers, and the challenges of maintaining professional standards while dealing with petty politics. "You did what a lot of us wish we could do," one contractor told me. "You stood your ground and didn't let them bully you into submission. That takes guts." I realized that my experience had broader implications beyond my own neighborhood. HOAs across the country wielded significant power over homeowners, and when that power was abused, it could cause real harm. My decision to fight back, to document everything, and to refuse to be intimidated had been the right choice, not just for me, but as an example of what was possible when people stood up for themselves. April brought the first signs of spring and the end of snow season. I performed final cleanup work, removing accumulated sand and salt from roads and driveways, and began transitioning to my landscaping services. The change of seasons felt symbolic, a literal and metaphorical thaw after a long, difficult winter. Lisa and I set our wedding date for July, and Mrs. Chen insisted on helping with the planning. She had become like family to both of us, a kind and wise presence who offered advice and support without being overbearing. We decided to hold the ceremony at a historic venue overlooking Lake Champlain, with a reception in a restored barn. In May, a journalist from a regional magazine contacted me about writing an article on HOA disputes and reform. She had heard about my case and wanted to feature it as an example of successful resistance to HOA overreach. After discussing it with Lisa and Robert Chen, I agreed to participate. The interview took place at my house, and I walked the journalist through everything that had happened, showing her the documentation, security footage, and legal correspondence. She was particularly interested in how the community had rallied together to remove Patricia from power. "What advice would you give to someone facing a similar situation?" she asked. "Document everything. Every interaction, every citation, every piece of evidence. Keep detailed records with dates and times, and don't be afraid to lawyer up if necessary. HOAs have legal authority, but they're not above the law. They can be challenged when they abuse their power. Do you think most HOA conflicts can be resolved the way yours was? I think it depends on the community." We were lucky that most people in Pinewood Hills were reasonable and willing to stand up for what was right. But the key is not giving up just because it's easier. Sometimes you have to fight for your home and your dignity. The article came out in June, just a few weeks before the wedding. It was fair and well written, presenting the facts without unnecessary drama. Several other Vermont residents commented online that they had faced similar issues with their own HOAs, and some reached out to me directly for advice. I found myself becoming an unexpected advocate for HOA reform. I testified before a state legislative committee considering new regulations for homeowners associations, arguing for stronger oversight, clearer appeal processes, and protection for residents who faced retaliation for challenging board decisions. The wedding in July was perfect. Over 200 people attended, including most of my Pinewood Hills neighbors. Derek was my best man, and Mrs. Chen gave a reading during the ceremony that had everyone in tears. Jennifer Holloway, representing the HOA board, presented Lisa and me with a beautiful quilt made by neighborhood residents, each square containing a message of congratulations and well wishes. During his toast at the reception, Derek joked about how I had found love during the Great Snow Plowing controversy. "Most people meet their partners at bars or through dating apps," he said. "Carter met Lisa by being stubborn and principled, which is very on brand for him." Everyone laughed, and I realized that the whole ordeal had become part of my story, not something to be ashamed of, but something that had shaped me and led me to where I was supposed to be. Lisa and I honeymooned in Oregon, exploring the coast and mountains, far from snow and HOAs and neighborhood drama. When we returned in August, we moved into a house we had purchased together, still in Pinewood Hills but larger and better suited for the family we hoped to start. The new house needed landscaping work, which was perfect for me. I spent late summer and fall creating gardens, installing pathways, and designing outdoor spaces. Neighbors stopped by to admire the work and chat, and I was reminded again of why I loved this community despite the challenges I had faced. In November, the first anniversary of Patricia's arrest passed quietly. The neighborhood had moved on, and few people mentioned her anymore. She had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of what could happen when power went to someone's head, and they forgot that leadership was about service, not control. The HOA board continued to function well under Jennifer's leadership. They had successfully navigated several minor controversies, always prioritizing communication and fairness. The new citation system had resulted in far fewer violations, partly because the focus had shifted to helping residents comply rather than punishing them for minor infractions. When the first major snow of the new season arrived in December, I was ready as always. But this time, as I plowed through the neighborhood in the pre-dawn darkness, I felt nothing but satisfaction and peace. This was my home, my community, and my purpose. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. Mrs. Chen called me the next morning, as she often did after a big snow. "Carter, dear, your work is always impeccable. Thank you for taking such good care of us." "It's my pleasure, Mrs. Chen. You know, I've been thinking about everything that happened last year. You taught this community an important lesson." "What's that?" "That ordinary people can stand up to bullies and win. That communities are stronger when they work together. And that kindness and service should be valued, not exploited." "Those are good lessons, Carter, important lessons." After hanging up, I stood in my kitchen, coffee in hand, looking out at the snow-covered neighborhood. Mrs. Chen was right. The conflict with Patricia and the HOA had been difficult and stressful, but it had also revealed the best in people. It had shown that communities could self-correct when enough residents cared enough to get involved. My decision to stop plowing the community road had been the catalyst for change. It had been a simple act of boundary setting, a refusal to be taken advantage of any longer, but it had forced the community to confront the dysfunction in their leadership and take action to fix it. Lisa came downstairs, wrapped in a robe, and kissed me good morning. "Long night, just the usual." "About 4 hours of plowing. You should rest. We have that dinner party tonight at the Rodriguez's." "I know. I'll take a nap this afternoon." She poured her own coffee and joined me at the window. "Do you ever regret buying here, with all the drama we went through?" "Never. This is home." And yeah, we had some drama, but look at how it turned out. We have amazing neighbors, a well-run HOA, and a community that actually cares about its members. That's rare. You're right. I guess sometimes you have to fight for the good things. That's exactly right. As another winter unfolded, I continued my work with a sense of contentment I had never felt before. The snow came and went. I plowed the roads. The HOA paid me fairly, and life went on in the peaceful rhythm of a functional community. In February, Lisa announced she was pregnant. We shared the news with Mrs. Chen first, and she cried with joy. "A baby, how wonderful! This neighborhood needs more children, more life, more joy." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and summer. I continued working, though Lisa insisted I scale back my hours as her due date approached. In September, our daughter Catherine was born, named after my late mother. Holding her in the hospital, looking at her tiny, perfect face, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for everything in my life. Mrs. Chen visited us the day we brought Catherine home, bearing gifts and wisdom. "You're going to be a wonderful father, Carter. You have the two most important qualities, love and integrity. The rest you'll figure out as you go." The neighborhood rallied around us, as neighborhoods do when new life arrives. Meals appeared on our doorstep, offers to help poured in, and congratulations came from every direction. This was community at its best. People caring for each other, celebrating together, supporting one another through life's milestones. As that second winter after the HOA crisis approached, I found myself reflecting on how much my life had changed. 2 years ago, I had been a single guy living alone, running a business, trying to be a good neighbor. Now I was a husband and father, still running the business, still being a good neighbor, but with so much more purpose and connection. The first snow after Catherine's birth fell on a quiet December night. I bundled up and went out to plow, leaving Lisa and the baby sleeping peacefully. The work was meditative, the truck's engine a steady rumble, the scrape of the blade against pavement a familiar sound. I thought about my daughter and the world she would grow up in, this neighborhood and community that had been tested and had emerged stronger. When I returned home, Lisa was awake, feeding Catherine in the nursery. I kissed them both and went to make coffee as dawn broke over Pinewood Hills. Another storm weathered, another day beginning, another chapter in the ongoing story of home and community and the quiet persistence required to maintain both. I never saw Patricia again. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had found work in New Hampshire and was slowly rebuilding her life. I hoped she had learned from what happened, that she had gained some perspective and understanding. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even those who have caused harm. The HOA continued to function well, proving that good governance was possible with the right people and the right systems. Jennifer served 2 more years as president before stepping down to pursue other interests. New leaders emerged, each bringing their own style but all maintaining the principles of transparency, fairness, and service that had been established after Patricia's removal. My snow removal contract renewed each year without issue. The relationship between me and the HOA remained professional and mutually beneficial. I did good work, they paid me fairly, and the community roads stayed clear all winter. It was boring and perfect, exactly how it should be. Years passed. Catherine grew into a curious, active toddler. My business expanded, requiring me to hire additional staff. Lisa returned to teaching part-time. Mrs. Chen remained a constant presence in our lives. The grandmother Catherine never had otherwise. The rhythm of seasons, work, and family life created a pattern of contentment I had never imagined possible. Sometimes, especially during quiet moments plowing snow in the early morning darkness, I would think back to that first citation taped to my mailbox. That piece of paper had set so much in motion, had led to conflict and resolution, had tested me and ultimately shaped me into a better, stronger person. I had learned that standing up for yourself matters. That communities need people willing to challenge injustice, even small neighborhood injustices that might seem trivial to outsiders. That documentation and persistence can overcome petty tyranny. That most people are decent and will support what's right when given the chance. The story of my conflict with the HOA became part of Pinewood Hills lore, told to new residents as an example of how the neighborhood had reformed itself. Some people thought it was funny, others found it inspiring, but everyone agreed that it had been a turning point for the community. As for me, I was just a guy who wanted to plow some snow and be left alone. I never set out to be a community advocate or an example of standing up to HOA overreach. But when the situation demanded it, I found the strength to fight back. And in doing so, I discovered not just my own resilience, but the essential goodness of the community around me. Now, years later, with a family and a thriving business and a neighborhood full of friends, I could look back and see that every difficult moment had been worth it. The harassment, the vandalism, the legal battles, they had all led to this peaceful, purposeful life. On winter mornings when I fire up my plow truck and head out into the pre-dawn darkness, I pass the clubhouse with its well-maintained parking lot and the community road that I clear several times each season. I think about Patricia sometimes, wondering if she ever thinks about how different things might have been if she had just left me alone, if she had appreciated rather than persecuted the neighbor who was trying to help. But mostly I think about the work ahead, the driveways to clear, the roads to plow, the elderly neighbors who depend on me, and the community that has become my home in the truest sense. I think about Lisa and Catherine waiting for me when I finish, about Mrs. Chen who will call to thank me, about Derek who will text some joke about snow, about all the ordinary, extraordinary moments that make up a life well lived. The snow falls, I plow it. The HOA pays me, I deposit the check. The seasons change, life continues. It's simple and complicated, mundane and meaningful, exactly the way it should be. And if another HOA president ever tries to cite me for imaginary violations, well, I know exactly what to do. I have the security cameras, the documentation systems, the legal contacts, and most importantly, the experience of having stood my ground once and won. I have the confidence that comes from knowing that fighting for what's right, even in something as small as a neighborhood snow dispute, matters more than taking the easy path of compliance and silence. But I don't think that will happen again. The systems are better now, the oversight stronger, the community more engaged. We learned our lessons collectively and individually. We know what can happen when unchecked authority meets ego and petness. We know the importance of accountability, transparency, and basic human decency in community governance. As I finish my routes and head home on those winter mornings, the sky lightening from black to gray to pink, I feel nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges that made me stronger, for the community that stood with me, for the life that emerged from conflict and resolution. Gratitude for snow and plows and neighbors and home. This is my story. A story about standing up to an HOA, about refusing to be bullied, about the power of community when people choose to do what's right. It started with a false citation about snow removal, escalated into harassment and vandalism, and ended with justice, reform, and a stronger neighborhood. But more than that, it's a story about home, about finding your place and defending it, about the ordinary heroism required to maintain integrity in the face of petty tyranny. It's about knowing when to help and when to stop helping, when to accommodate and when to resist, when to be flexible and when to stand firm. I'm proud of how I handled it, proud of the community for rising to the occasion, proud of the life I've built in the aftermath. The snow will keep falling, I'll keep plowing, and life will continue in this neighborhood I fought to remain part of. That's enough. That's everything.